A queen doesn't beg. She walks away. And when Serena Vale finally sits across from the man who broke her, she's carrying the one thing he wanted most and will never have. This is a story about power, betrayal, and the moment a woman realizes she's worth more than the empire that tried to define her. If you want to see how this ends, stay until the final word. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and let's dive into the day Serena Vale made a crime king fall to his knees.
Chichetia.
The marble hallway leading to the Cruz family council chamber stretched longer than Serena remembered. Her heels clicked against the stone with a rhythm that felt too steady for how hard her heart was pounding. She kept her spine straight, shoulders back, the heavy wool coat wrapped around her body like armor. The fabric was expensive, midnight blue cashmere that Damien would have bought her once, back when he still thought she mattered. Now she'd bought it herself. The double doors and the end loomed ahead, dark wood inlaid with gold that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Everything in Damien Cruz's world had a price tag, including the people in it, especially the people in it. Serena's hand found the door handle, cold metal, solid, real. She pushed it open. The conversation inside died instantly. 6 faces turned toward her. Damien's lawyer, Marcus Chen, sat closest to the door with a leather portfolio open in front of him. Next to him, Damien's Aunt Gloria, the family matriarch who'd made it clear from day one that Serena would never be good enough for their bloodline. 2 men Serena didn't recognize, probably associates from the business side of things. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones who had to be the mediator. And at the head of the table, exactly where he always positioned himself, sat Damien Cruz. He looked the same. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on currency. All hard angles and aristocratic bones. Gray eyes that could freeze you in place or strip you down to nothing, depending on his mood. The suit was Tom Ford, probably the Navy one he wore when he wanted to project control without seeming like he was trying too hard. Those eyes landed on her now, and for just a second, less than a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition of something he'd forgotten existed. Then it was gone. Mrs. Cruz. Marcus stood, gesturing to the empty chair across from Damien. Please, have a seat. We're ready to begin whenever you are. Mrs. Cruz. The name felt like borrowed clothes that had never quite fit right. Serena moved into the room without acknowledging Damien directly. She could feel his attention on her as she crossed to the chair, tracking her movements the way he used to track everything. Inventory, shipments, rivals, threats. She'd fallen into that last category somewhere along the way, though she hadn't realized it until it was too late. The coat stayed on. She'd planned that detail carefully. As she sat, she caught Gloria's eyes narrowing with disapproval. The older woman had always hated that Serena refused to perform submission properly. She'd wanted a daughter-in-law who understood her place, who smiled through the cruelty and called it family loyalty. Serena had tried that. For 3 years, she'd tried. Thank you all for being here today. The mediator, her nameplate read Patricia Hoffman, opened a folder in front of her. This should be relatively straightforward. Mr. and Mrs. Cruz have agreed to the terms of dissolution as outlined in the preliminary documents. Today, we're simply here to execute the final paperwork and ensure both parties understand their rights and obligations moving forward. Straightforward, right. Serena watched Patricia shuffle through papers with the detached efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. To her, this was just another divorce. Another couple who couldn't make it work. Another marriage that died quietly in a conference room with expensive furniture and bad lighting. She had no idea what she was actually witnessing. Mrs. Cruz, Patricia looked up. I need to confirm, you've reviewed the settlement terms with independent counsel? I have. And you understand that by signing today, you're waiving any claim to Mr. Cruz's business assets, real estate holdings, and financial accounts in exchange for the lump sum payment specified in Section 4? I understand. Serena's voice came out steady, calm. She'd practiced this part too. Across the table, Damien shifted slightly. She didn't look at him, but she felt it. The weight of his attention like pressure against her skin. The amount is quite generous, Marcus added, his tone suggesting this was something Serena should be grateful for. Far more than the prenuptial agreement requires. Mr. Cruz wanted to ensure you'd be comfortable moving forward. Comfortable. as if money could patch up what he'd actually taken from her. How thoughtful. Serena kept her eyes on Patricia. I'm sure Mr. Cruz's generosity knows no bounds. Gloria made a small sound. Disapproval, probably. Or maybe satisfaction that Serena was finally leaving without causing the scene she'd probably expected. There's one additional item. Patricia glanced at Damien, then back to Serena. The residence at 1247 Ashford Heights. It was purchased during the marriage but titled solely in Mr. Cruz's name. However, Mr. Cruz has agreed to transfer ownership to you as part of the settlement. You'll need to sign the deed transfer documents separately. The house. Their house. The place where she'd tried to build something that resembled a life while Damien built his empire and forgot she existed. I don't want it, Serena said. Patricia blinked. I'm sorry? The house. I don't want it. Mrs. Cruz, I should advise you that the property is valued at approximately $4.2 million. That's a substantial asset to refuse. I'm aware. Now Damien did speak. His voice cut through the room like a blade through silk, quiet, controlled, with an edge underneath that most people missed until they were already bleeding. Keep the house, Serena. She looked at him then, met those gray eyes straight on. He looked different somehow, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly how. Maybe it was the way he held himself, that particular stillness he got when he was working through a problem he hadn't anticipated. Or maybe it was the fact that for once, he seemed to actually be seeing her instead of looking through her. I don't want anything from you, she said. Not the house, not the money, not a single thing that ties me to this family or this name. Be reasonable. That was Gloria, unable to help herself. You're throwing away nothing. Serena didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. I'm throwing away nothing because I'm walking away with exactly what I brought into this marriage, myself. Marcus cleared his throat. Mrs. Cruz, I strongly advise you to reconsider. The financial settlement alone will provide you with security, and I have a job. Serena turned to him. I have my own accounts. I've been supporting myself for months now without touching a single dollar from him. I'll be fine. This is absurd. Gloria stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Damien, talk sense into her. She's being emotional and stupid, and she'll regret this the moment she... Sit down, Gloria. Damien didn't look at his aunt, didn't break eye contact with Serena. This is between me and my wife. Something in his voice made Gloria freeze. After a moment, she lowered herself back into her chair, lips pressed into a thin line. The room had gone very quiet. Serena could feel her pulse in her throat, behind her ears, in her fingertips where they rested on the polished table. The coat suddenly felt too warm, the fabric too heavy against her body. She needed to keep it together for just a little longer, just until the papers were signed and she could walk out of here forever. Why? Damien asked. It wasn't what she'd expected. Not an argument or a command or an attempt to assert control. Just a question, direct and simple, like he genuinely wanted to understand. That almost made it worse. Because I don't want to owe you anything, Serena said. I don't want to spend the rest of my life knowing that any stability I have came from you, that you could look at me someday and think I took something from you, or that I needed you to survive. I want to be completely, entirely separate from you in every possible way. Something moved behind his eyes. She couldn't read it. You never owed me anything, he said quietly. The laugh that came out of her throat surprised them both. It wasn't bitter or angry, just tired. So tired. That's the problem, Damien. I don't think you ever understood what you took. Patricia, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this was going, spoke up quickly. Perhaps we should take a brief recess. Give everyone a moment to... No. Serena straightened in her chair. I want to finish this. Today. Now. Mrs. Cruz, I'll take the settlement money. She cut Patricia off, decision made in the space between one breath and the next. Since apparently that's non-negotiable, and you'll all sit here arguing with me about it for hours if I refuse. But nothing else. No property, no jewelry, nothing. Just cut me a check and let me sign the papers so we can all move on with our lives. Patricia looked at Damien. Serena hated that. The automatic deference, the assumption that he was the one who made the final call even now, even here, when they were supposed to be equals at least in this. But Damien just nodded once. Draw up an amendment. She takes the settlement sum. Nothing else. I keep the house. This is insane, Gloria muttered. Absolutely insane. Nobody responded to her. Marcus started making notes on his tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Patricia pulled up something on her laptop, brow furrowed in concentration. One of the silent associates whispered something to the other, and Serena sat very still, coat wrapped around her secret, and waited. It took 15 minutes to revise the documents, 15 minutes of painful small talk and awkward silence while Marcus and Patricia worked through the legal language. Serena spent it studying the paintings on the wall, abstract pieces that probably cost more than most people's cars, all sharp angles and bold colors that meant nothing and everything at once. Damien spent it studying her. She could feel his attention like heat against her skin. He'd always been like that, intensely focused when something caught his interest, completely absent when it didn't. She'd spent their entire marriage trying to figure out how to keep his attention, how to matter enough that he'd actually see her. Now she just wanted him to look away. "Ready," Patricia finally announced. She slid a stack of papers across the table toward Serena. "I've marked the signature lines with tabs, initial here, here, and here, sign at the bottom of page 6. Serena picked up the pen. It was heavier than she expected. Solid metal, probably some luxury brand that cost more than it should. Everything in Damien's world was like that. Expensive for the sake of being expensive, valuable because other people couldn't have it. She poised the tip over the first signature line and stopped. Not because she was having second thoughts, not because some part of her wanted to stay or thought things could be different or believed in the fantasy of fixing something this broken. She stopped because timing mattered, because this moment, right here, right now, was the only leverage she'd ever have. The only chance to make him feel even a fraction of what she'd felt when he'd looked at her like a failure, like a broken thing, like something disposable. "Before I sign," Serena said slowly, "I want to say something." Patricia glanced at Marcus. Marcus glanced at Damien. "Serena." Damien's voice held a warning. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" She looked up at him. "You think this is hard? Sitting in this room signing papers? You think that's the difficult part?" "I think we've both said everything that needs to be said." "No?" She set the pen down carefully. "You said everything you needed to say. 3 months ago, in our bedroom, when you told me I was useless to you because I couldn't give you what you wanted." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Gloria's eyes widened. Marcus stopped typing. Patricia's professional mask slipped for just a second, revealing something that looked like sympathy underneath. "That's not," Damien started. "What did you call it?" Serena continued, her voice eerily calm. "A fundamental failure. That was the phrase, right? You said I had failed in the most fundamental way a wife could fail. That I was supposed to secure your legacy, and instead I was just empty." "Serena." His voice had gone very quiet, dangerous. "Don't do this here." "Why not? These are your people, your lawyer, your family. They already know, don't they? That I'm defective, that I couldn't do the one job that mattered. That's not what I—" "You said you needed an heir." Serena stood up slowly, chair sliding back. "You said the empire needed continuity, that your bloodline needed to continue, that a wife who couldn't provide that was worth less than the business deals you made over lunch." I was angry. Damien stood too, matching her. "I said things I shouldn't have said, things I didn't mean." "You meant every word." She smiled then, and it was the saddest thing in the room. "That's the thing about you, Damien. You only say what you mean. You're too controlled for anything else. So when you told me I was worthless to you, that I'd failed you, that you needed to find a wife who could actually fulfill her purpose, you meant it. If you're trying to make me feel guilty—" "I'm not trying to make you feel anything." Serena reached for the coat zipper. "I'm just making sure you understand what you actually lost." Her hands were shaking now. She could feel it, the tremor running through her fingers as she slowly unzipped the heavy wool. The room was watching her, all of them, even the associates who had no idea what they were witnessing. But she only cared about one set of eyes. The coat fell open. Serena wasn't showing yet. Not really. At 4 months, she could still hide it under the right clothes. But the dress she'd chosen today wasn't designed to hide anything. It was fitted silk jersey in deep burgundy, and it clung to every curve, every change, every new reality her body had been adapting to while she'd disappeared from Damien's world. She watched his face as he registered what he was seeing, watched the exact moment comprehension hit. His expression went blank first, that defense mechanism he always defaulted to when something blindsided him. Then shock cracked through, visible for just a fraction of a second before he locked it down again. His eyes dropped to her stomach, to the subtle swell that was undeniable now that she'd let him see it. Then his gaze snapped back to her face. "No," he said. The word came out rough. "That's not—" "Oh, but it is." Serena let the coat slide off her shoulders, caught it, and draped it over her chair. "Surprise." Gloria made a strangled sound. Marcus had gone completely still, his tablet forgotten. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "When?" Damien's voice had changed, lost that careful control. "When did you find out?" "About a week after you told me I was useless. Ironic timing, don't you think?" He moved around the table before anyone could stop him, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. Serena held her ground. She'd known he'd do this, known he'd need to get closer, to confirm with his own eyes what he couldn't quite believe. 4 months, she said before he could ask. "Give or take a week. I've been to the doctor. Everything's fine, healthy, developing normally, all the things you were so concerned about. You didn't tell me." His voice was barely above a whisper now. "You've known for months and you didn't tell the man who said I was broken? The man who looked at me like I was defective goods? The man who was already planning to replace me with someone who could do the job right?" Serena tilted her head. "No, Damien, I didn't tell you." "That's my child." "That's my child." She corrected him, emphasis on the possessive. "Mine, my body, my pregnancy, my decision what to do about it. Our child." Damien reached out like he might touch her stomach, then caught himself. His hand hovered in the space between them. "It's our— You gave up our when you gave up on me." The room was so quiet, Serena could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Damien breathing, could see the muscle jumping in his jaw as he processed what she was telling him. "Why are you here?" he asked finally. "Why show up today? Why tell me now if you were just going to—" "Because you deserve to know what you threw away." Serena stepped back, putting distance between them. "Because I wanted you to understand that you didn't fail because I was broken. You failed because you're the kind of man who looks at a person he's supposed to love and sees only what they can provide for you, what they can give you, what they're worth in the context of your empire. That's not fair. None of this is fair." She moved back toward the table, toward the papers still waiting for her signature. "You want to know what's not fair? Finding out I'm carrying your baby the same week you tell me I'm not enough. Having to sit in a doctor's office alone and see the heartbeat and know that the father, the man who wanted this more than anything, will never deserve to be part of it." "Serena." Her name came out broken. "I made a mistake. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things if I'd known—" "If you'd known what? You would have kept me? Valued me? Suddenly remembered I was a person and not just an incubator for your legacy?" She laughed, and it hurt her throat. "That's the problem. You only care now because of what I'm carrying, not because of who I am, not because you loved me, because I finally have something you want." "That's not true, isn't it?" Serena picked up the pen again. "Ask yourself honestly, Damien. If I wasn't pregnant right now, if I was just here to sign the divorce papers like we planned, would you be standing there looking at me like your world just ended? Or would you be thinking about which socialite you're going to marry next?" He didn't answer. Couldn't, probably. Because they both knew the truth. "I thought so." Serena looked down at the papers. The signature line seemed to blur in front of her eyes. "I'm going to sign these now, and then I'm going to leave, and you're going to let me." "Like hell I am," Damien's voice hardened, shifting into the tone he used when issuing commands. "You're carrying my child. That changes everything." "It changes nothing." Serena met his eyes. "This baby has nothing to do with you, will never have anything to do with you. I'm not putting your name on the birth certificate. I'm not asking for child support. I'm not giving you custody or visitation or any claim whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, this child has one parent, me." "You can't do that." Marcus had found his voice. "Mr. Cruz has parental rights. Legal? I can do whatever I want." Serena didn't even glance at him. "Because right now, at this moment, before those papers are signed, I'm still Mrs. Cruz. I still have access to all those lawyers you keep on retainer, all those connections, all that power you wield like a weapon. And if you try to fight me on this, if you try to take my baby the way you tried to take my dignity, I will burn your entire empire to the ground before I let you touch this child." "You're being hysterical." Gloria stood up again. "You can't seriously think—" "Sit down." Serena's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to speak. You don't get to have an opinion. You spent 3 years making sure I knew I wasn't family, that I'd never be family, that I was just some girl your nephew married who'd never be good enough for the crew's name. Well, congratulations. You were right. I'm not family, which means my baby isn't either. So you lost your chance at a great niece or nephew the same day you decided I was beneath you." Gloria's face went white, then red, but she sat down. Serena turned back to Damien. He was staring at her like he'd never seen her before, like she was a stranger wearing his wife's face. "You're serious," he said. "You're actually going to—" "I'm going to raise my child." Serena picked up the pen again. "Alone. Without you. Without any of this. Because I would rather struggle and work 3 jobs and live in a studio apartment than let my baby grow up thinking this is what family looks like. That power matters more than people. That love is conditional on what you can provide. I would never—" "You already did." She positioned the pen on the first signature line. "To me. Why would I believe you'd be different with a child?" "Because it's my child." "No." Serena pressed the pen to paper. "It's mine." She signed her initials, once, twice, 3 times in the places Patricia had marked. "Stop." Damien's hand came down on the papers, covering the final signature line. "Just stop. We can figure this out. We can—" "Move your hand." "Serena, please." He was begging now, actually begging. She'd never heard him sound like that. "Don't do this. Don't take my child away from me. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong, but don't punish the baby for my mistakes." "I'm not punishing anyone." Serena looked at where his hand covered the papers. "I'm protecting my child from a man who sees people as assets, who measures worth in what you can produce, who'll love that baby right up until the moment they disappoint you, and then toss them aside like they never mattered at all." "I would never do that to my own child." "You did it to me." The words hung in the air between them. "I was your wife. You promised me forever. And the second I couldn't give you what you wanted, you were already looking for my replacement. So forgive me if I don't believe you'd be any different with a child who might be too sensitive, or too artistic, or too anything that doesn't fit into your perfect empire." Damien's hand trembled against the papers. She could see him fighting for control, fighting to find the words that would change her mind. But there were no words. That's what he didn't understand yet. "Move your hand," she said again, softer this time. "Please." For a long moment, he didn't. Then slowly, like it physically hurt him, he lifted his hand from the papers. Serena signed her name on the final line. The marriage ended with 12 letters in blue ink. She set the pen down carefully and slid the papers across the table to Patricia, who'd been watching the entire exchange with something like horror on her professional face. "Mrs. Cruz," Patricia started, then caught herself. "Ms. Vale, I need to inform you that if there's a custody dispute—" "There won't be." Serena picked up her coat. "Mr. Cruz is going to sign those papers and let me walk out of here, because if he doesn't, I'll tell every newspaper, every tabloid, every gossip site exactly what kind of man he is. I'll detail every cruel word, every cold dismissal, every moment he made me feel like I was worthless. I'll destroy his reputation so completely that no legitimate business partner will touch him." "You're bluffing." But Damien's voice was uncertain. "Try me." Serena slipped her arms into the coat sleeves. "You know me, Damien. You know I don't bluff. So ask yourself, is your pride worth your empire?" He stared at her for what felt like forever. She could see him calculating, weighing options, running through scenarios in that sharp mind of his. Then he moved back to his chair and sat down. Marcus slid a second set of papers in front of him, the ones with his signature lines. Damien picked up the pen. "I'm sorry," he said, looking up at her one last time. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." "It's worth nothing." Serena fastened her coat. "But you'll have plenty of time to think about that." He signed, fast, like ripping off a bandage. 3 initials and 1 signature, and it was done. Serena didn't wait for Patricia to make it official. Didn't wait for the awkward goodbyes or the paperwork copies or any of it. She just turned and walked toward those double doors, her footsteps echoing in the too quiet room. "Serena, She stopped with her hand on the door. Didn't turn around. Is it mine? Damien's voice was raw, desperate. The baby. Is it mine? The question she'd known was coming, the one he'd been too afraid to ask until now. Serena looked back over her shoulder. Their eyes met across the length of the conference room. She saw everything in his face, fear and hope and grief all tangled together. Does it matter? She asked quietly. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her with a sound like finality. Serena made it down the marble hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby, and out onto the street before her knees started to shake. The winter air hit her face like a slap, cold and sharp and real. She walked half a block before she had to stop and lean against a building, one hand pressed to her stomach, the other covering her mouth. She'd done it, actually done it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Probably Marcus or Patricia calling to finish the paperwork properly. Or maybe Damien trying one last time to... No. She couldn't think about that. Couldn't let herself wonder if she'd made a mistake, if she should have told him the truth, if there was any version of this where things could be different. The baby moved. Just a flutter, so subtle she might have imagined it. But she knew she hadn't. It's okay, she whispered, hands spread across her stomach. We're okay. We're going to be okay. She pushed off the building and started walking again. Away from the tower, away from the empire, away from everything she'd almost been. Behind her, 18 stories up in a conference room with expensive furniture and bad lighting, Damien Cruz sat very still and stared at the papers that had just ended his marriage. Should I call security? Marcus asked quietly. Have them follow her? Find out where she's staying? No. Damien's voice sounded hollow. Let her go. But sir, if the child is yours, I said, let her go. He stood up, papers in hand. His fingers were white where they gripped the edges. She's right. I don't deserve to know. Gloria made a sound of protest, but he silenced her with a look. Everybody out, he said. Now. They filed out quickly. Marcus, Patricia, the associates, even Gloria, though she shot him one last disapproving look before leaving. The door closed behind them with a quiet click. Damien was alone. He looked down at the divorce papers, at Serena's signature in neat script across the bottom of page 6, at the place where his name used to be connected to hers by law and promise. Then he did something he hadn't done in 15 years, not since his father died and he'd had to step up and take control of everything. He sat down in the empty conference room, put his head in his hands, and broke. 3 months before the divorce papers, Serena had been sitting in the same bedroom where she'd spent 3 years trying to become the woman Damien wanted, staring at a pregnancy test she'd taken on impulse. 2 pink lines. Her hands had shaken so badly she'd nearly dropped the plastic stick into the sink. She'd stood there in the bathroom, the one with marble countertops and a shower that could fit 6 people, and felt the floor tilt under her feet. Pregnant. After 3 years of trying. 3 years of doctor appointments and tests and invasive procedures and medications that made her sick and hormonal and desperate. 3 years of watching Damien's face close down a little more each time she got her period, each time another month passed without the air he needed. And now, 1 week after he told her she was useless to him, her body had decided to work. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't made her want to throw up. She'd taken 3 more tests just to be sure. Then she'd made an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, the fertility specialist who'd been managing her case for the past 18 months. The appointment was in 2 days. She could wait 2 days. She could sit with this impossible secret for 48 hours before it became real. Except sitting with it meant being in the house. And being in the house meant seeing Damien. And seeing Damien meant pretending everything was normal when her entire world had just cracked open. She'd lasted 6 hours. Damien had come home around 7 that evening, later than usual. She'd heard him in the hallway, heard his keys hit the dish by the door, heard his footsteps on the stairs. Then he'd appeared in the bedroom doorway, already loosening his tie. I have a dinner meeting tomorrow, he'd said without preamble. Singapore investors. I'll probably be late. No hello. No, how was your day? Just information delivered in that clipped tone he used when his mind was already somewhere else. Serena had been sitting on the bed, still in the clothes she'd worn that morning, pregnancy test hidden in her nightstand drawer. She'd looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find some trace of the man she'd married, The one who'd smiled at her across a crowded gallery opening and asked if she thought modern art was brilliant or bullshit. The one who'd taken her to dinner and actually listened when she talked. The one who'd promised her that being part of his world didn't mean losing herself. That man was gone. Had been gone for a while, probably. She'd just been too busy trying to fix herself to notice when he'd disappeared. "Okay," she'd said. He'd paused, hand on his tie. "That's it? Okay. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Most wives have opinions about their husbands working late." "I'm not most wives." The words had come out sharper than she'd intended. "Apparently I'm not any kind of wife at all, according to you." His jaw had tightened. "Serena, it's fine." She'd stood up, moved toward the bathroom. "Enjoy your dinner meeting. We need to talk about what I said last week." She'd stopped, turned. "Do we?" "I was frustrated. The board meeting had gone badly, and I took it out on you. It wasn't fair." An apology, sort of. The closest thing to one that Damien ever offered, an acknowledgement of poor timing rather than poor behavior. "You weren't wrong, though," Serena had said quietly. "Were you? About what you need. About what this marriage was supposed to provide." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." She'd looked at him across the bedroom they'd shared for 3 years. "You meant every word. You just didn't mean to say it out loud." He'd opened his mouth, closed it. For once in his life, Damien Cruz hadn't had a response ready. "I'm going to stay at Rachel's for a few days," Serena had said. Rachel Kim, her best friend since college, the one person who'd never treated Serena differently after she'd married into money. "Give us both some space to think. Running away won't solve anything. Neither will pretending this is fixable." She'd grabbed a bag from the closet and started throwing clothes into it. Damien had watched her without moving, without helping, without asking her to stay. That should have told her everything she needed to know. "How long?" he'd asked finally. "I don't know. A week? Maybe more." "The Lawson Charity Gala is on Saturday. We're expected to attend." Of course. The appearances, the obligations, the performance of being Damien Cruz's perfect wife. "I'll be there," she'd heard herself say. Because even then, even knowing what she knew, she'd still been playing the role. She'd finished packing in silence. Damien had disappeared into his office, the one connected to their bedroom, the one where he spent most of his time when he was home. She'd heard him on the phone as she'd left, voice low and controlled, probably already moving on to the next problem that needed solving. The pregnancy test had stayed hidden in the nightstand drawer. Rachel had taken one look at Serena's face when she'd shown up at her apartment and pulled her inside without questions. She'd made tea, neither of them drank, and sat with Serena on the couch, while Serena cried for the first time since Damien's words had shattered something fundamental inside her. "I can't do this anymore," Serena had said into Rachel's shoulder. "I can't keep trying to be enough for someone who doesn't actually want me." "Then don't." Rachel had pulled back, hands on Serena's shoulders. "Leave him. You've got your degree. You've got experience. You can get a job, get your own place, build a life that doesn't revolve around being Mrs. Cruz. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You just don't want it to be." Maybe Rachel had been right. Maybe Serena had still been looking for a reason to stay, some sign that Damien actually cared beneath all that cold control. Then she'd gone to the doctor appointment and heard the heartbeat. Dr. Chen had been professional, warm, cautiously optimistic. She'd confirmed what the home tests had already told Serena: 8 weeks pregnant, healthy development, everything progressing normally. She'd printed out an ultrasound photo that showed a blob roughly the size of a raspberry and handed it to Serena with a smile that said this was supposed to be good news. "Congratulations," Dr. Chen had said. "I know you and your husband have been trying for a long time. He must be thrilled." Serena had looked at the ultrasound photo, at the tiny cluster of cells that would become a person who would have Damien's eyes, maybe, his sharp mind, his ability to reduce everything to transactions and value propositions. "I haven't told him yet," she'd said. Dr. Chen's smile had faltered slightly. "Oh, well, I'm sure he'll be—" "Can I ask you something?" Serena had interrupted. "Hypothetically. Of course. If someone got pregnant and they weren't sure they wanted the father involved, what would their options be?" The room had gone very quiet. Dr. Chen had sat down carefully in a rolling chair, expression shifting from pleased to concerned. "That's a complicated question," she'd said slowly. "Are you safe at home, Serena? Is there something I should know about?" "I'm safe. He's not. It's not like that. He's just..." Serena had struggled to find words that didn't make her sound crazy. "He wanted this baby for the wrong reasons, and I'm not sure I want to give him what he wants anymore." Dr. Chen had been quiet for a long moment. Then she'd pulled out a pamphlet from her desk drawer. "Resources for women in difficult situations, counseling services, legal aid. You have options," she'd said carefully. "Whatever you decide, you have options. But I'd strongly encourage you to speak with a counselor before making any major decisions. This is a lot to process, especially alone." Serena had taken the pamphlet, thanked the doctor, walked out of the office with the ultrasound photo in her purse and a decision already forming in the back of her mind. She'd gone to the Lawson Gala that Saturday because she'd said she would, because breaking a promise to Damien felt like giving him ammunition, and she needed to keep every advantage she had. The dress had been sapphire silk that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The jewelry had been Cruz family heirlooms that Gloria had begrudgingly provided. The smile had been practiced in the mirror until it looked natural. Damien had barely spoken to her in the car. When they'd arrived, he'd placed his hand on the small of her back, the gesture of a devoted husband, and guided her into the ballroom like she was a piece of furniture he was positioning correctly. "Stay close," he'd murmured. "The Singaporeans will be here. And I need you to make the right impression." "What impression is that?" "Stable, supportive, the kind of wife that suggests I'm reliable for long-term investments." She'd smiled at him then, bright and empty. "I'm an excellent actress." Something had flickered in his eyes. Discomfort, maybe, or recognition of something that shouldn't have needed to be said. Then Gerald Lawson had appeared, hand extended, booming voice carrying across the marble floors, and Damien had shifted seamlessly into business mode. Serena had stood next to him and played her part perfectly. She'd laughed at mediocre jokes. She'd made small talk with investors' wives about charity work and vacation homes. She'd let Damien's hand rest possessively on her waist while he discussed quarterly projections and market forecasts. And the entire time she'd been thinking about the ultrasound photo hidden in her clutch, about the secret growing inside her that would change everything or nothing depending on what she chose to do with it. "You're good at this." The voice had come from her left, a woman around Serena's age, blonde and sharp-eyed, champagne glass held casually in manicured fingers. Serena had recognized her vaguely from other events. Charlotte something, married to one of Damien's business associates. "Good at what?" Serena had asked. "The wife thing. Standing there looking perfect while they talk about numbers like the rest of us don't exist. It's not that hard. You just smile and nod." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Charlotte had taken a sip of champagne. "I tell myself I'm being strategic, that this is an investment in our future, that putting up with being furniture for a few hours a week is worth the lifestyle." "Is it worth it?" Charlotte had looked at her then, really looked at her. "Ask me in 10 years. If I'm still married, the answer is yes. If I'm divorced, the answer is, I should have left sooner." Serena had wanted to ask what made her stay. What made any of them stay when their husbands treated them like accessories instead of partners? But Damien had appeared then, hand on her elbow, already pulling her away. "We need to go," he'd said shortly. Something came up. She hadn't asked what, just followed him out to the car where his driver had been waiting. They'd ridden in silence back to the house, Damien's attention completely absorbed by whatever message had pulled him away from the gala. When they'd gotten home, he'd gone straight to his office. Serena had gone to the bedroom, taken off the expensive dress, removed the family jewelry, and sat on the edge of the bed in her slip. The ultrasound photo had still been in her clutch. She'd pulled it out, studied it in the dim light from the bedside lamp. This was real. This tiny blob was going to become a person who would need things from her, love and stability and protection from a world that would try to define them by their last name before they were old enough to understand what that meant. Could she do this with Damien, raise a child with a man who saw people as assets, who measured worth in production and utility? Could she do it without him? Single parent, working whatever job she could find, struggling to provide the kind of security that Damien's money could guarantee? The questions had circled in her head until she'd felt dizzy with them. Then Damien had come into the bedroom around 2 in the morning, face drawn with exhaustion. and climbed into bed without acknowledging she was there. She'd lain awake next to him, one hand on her stomach, and made her decision. The next morning, she'd called a lawyer. Not Marcus Chen, obviously. Not anyone connected to Damien or his empire. She'd found Elizabeth Morrison through a friend of Rachel's, a divorce attorney who specialized in high net worth cases and had a reputation for being ruthless when necessary. Elizabeth had listened to Serena's situation with the focused attention of someone who'd heard variations of the same story 100 times. "You want out," Elizabeth had said when Serena finished. It wasn't a question. "I want out. And the pregnancy is mine. I don't want him to know. I don't want him to have any claim. I don't want child support or custody agreements or any legal tie between him and this baby." Elizabeth had leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "That's going to be difficult. Fathers have rights even when marriages dissolve. If he finds out, he won't find out. Not until after everything is finalized." "You're sure about this? Once you start this process, it's hard to walk it back." Serena had thought about Damien's face when he told her she was useless. Thought about 3 years of trying to be enough for someone who didn't actually want her. Thought about the kind of father he would be to a child he'd wanted only as an heir. "I'm sure." They'd spent the next 2 hours going over details. The prenup Serena had signed before the wedding, drafted by Damien's lawyers, weighted heavily in his favor, giving her almost nothing in the event of divorce. The assets she could reasonably claim, the timeline for filing, the strategy for keeping the pregnancy secret until the papers were signed. "You're going to need to disappear," Elizabeth had said. "Not literally, but effectively. Move out. Cut contact. Make it clear you're done. If he thinks there's a chance at reconciliation, he'll drag this out. And the longer it takes, the more likely he is to find out about the baby." "How long will it take? With a prenup this tight? If he doesn't contest it, we could have it finalized in 3 months. But Serena, men like Damien Cruz don't give up control easily. Even if he doesn't want the marriage anymore, he's not going to like you being the one to end it." That had turned out to be prophetic. Serena had moved out 3 days later. Not to Rachel's this time, somewhere Damien couldn't casually show up. She'd rented a small apartment in a neighborhood he'd never think to look, paid for with the one credit card she had in her own name. She'd taken only what she'd brought into the marriage: clothes, books, a few photographs from before. Everything else had stayed in the house. All the gifts and jewelry and designer pieces that Damien had bought her, all the markers of being Mrs. Cruz. She'd left him a note. Short, clean, devastating in its simplicity. "I want a divorce. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't contact me. Serena." He'd called anyway. 17 times in the first 24 hours. She hadn't answered. Then the calls had stopped, replaced by a single text message. "If this is what you want, fine, but we do this properly. My lawyer will coordinate with yours." That had been it. No fight. No attempt to change her mind. No question about why she was leaving or what he could do differently. Just acceptance that their marriage was over, delivered in the same tone he probably used to end business partnerships that were no longer profitable. The formal divorce petition had been filed a week later. Serena had been 12 weeks pregnant by then, just starting to show if you knew what to look for. She'd bought loose clothing, started working at a small consulting firm that didn't care about her last name, built a life that had nothing to do with being Damien Cruz's wife. And she'd waited. The hardest part had been the doctor appointments, sitting in waiting rooms surrounded by happy couples, watching fathers-to-be rest protective hands on rounded bellies, hearing the excited chatter about nurseries and baby names and whose eyes the baby would have. Dr. Chen had never asked about Damien again, but she'd looked at Serena with something like pity every time she'd come in alone. "You're allowed to change your mind," she'd said once during the 16-week checkup, "about telling him, about including him. It's not too late." But it had been too late. Had been too late from the moment Damien had looked at her like she was broken. Rachel had been more direct about it. "You're being crazy," she'd said over dinner one night, watching Serena push pasta around her plate. "That's his kid. He has a right to know. He has a right to nothing. He gave up rights when he made me feel worthless." "Serena, I love you, but you're letting anger make decisions that you can't take back. What are you going to tell this baby when they ask about their father?" The truth. That their father cared more about legacy than love. That I protected them from growing up in a world where your value is measured by what you can provide. Rachel had put down her fork. Listen to yourself. You sound bitter and hurt, and you have every right to be. But this isn't about you and Damien anymore. This is about a kid who's going to grow up with questions you can't answer. I'll answer them honestly. Yeah? What happens when they're 15 and they Google their last name and figure out who their father is? What happens when they realize you kept them from a man who might have actually loved them? He wouldn't have loved them. He would have owned them. The argument had ended there, both of them too frustrated to continue. But Rachel's words had stuck. They'd circled in Serena's head late at night when she couldn't sleep, when the baby kicked and she imagined trying to explain this decision someday. She'd practiced the explanation. Made it sound rational. Made it sound like protection instead of revenge. But some part of her knew Rachel was right. Some part of her knew she was making an impossible choice for reasons that were more complicated than simple protection. The divorce proceedings had moved faster than Elizabeth had expected. Damien hadn't contested anything, hadn't fought the terms, hadn't tried to negotiate for better conditions. He just agreed. Marcus Chen had been professional throughout. No personal judgments, no attempts to understand why Mrs. Cruz suddenly wanted out of a marriage that had seemed stable enough from the outside. Just efficient coordination of paperwork and timelines. They'd scheduled the final signing for 3 months out, enough time for all the legal requirements, enough time for Serena to be visibly pregnant when she walked into that conference room. She'd planned that part carefully. The timing, the reveal, the moment when Damien would finally understand what he'd lost. It had felt powerful when she was planning it, righteous, like justice for 3 years of being treated as less than. But standing in her apartment the night before, one hand on her swollen belly, she'd felt something else entirely. Afraid. Not of Damien, not of what he might do or say, but of herself. Of the person she was becoming. The person who would use her own child as a weapon to hurt someone who'd hurt her first. The baby had kicked then, strong, insistent. A reminder that this wasn't about Damien or revenge or who'd won some invisible war. "I'm sorry," she'd whispered to her stomach. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this." But she'd gone to the signing anyway, had walked into that conference room with her secret and her anger and her carefully planned reveal. And it had played out exactly as she'd imagined. The shock on Damien's face, the desperate questions, the attempt to reclaim control, the final understanding that he'd lost something he couldn't replace. She'd won. So why did it feel like losing? Now, walking away from the building where she'd just ended her marriage, Serena felt the adrenaline start to drain away. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were cold despite the gloves. The baby was moving, restless, picking up on her stress the way Dr. Chen had warned they would. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. Rachel. How did it go? Serena stopped walking, leaned against a storefront window. Her reflection looked back at her, pale, tired, wrapped in expensive cashmere that couldn't quite hide what she'd been trying to conceal. She typed back, "It's done." Rachel. Are you okay? Was she okay? She'd just destroyed her marriage, told her ex-husband about a pregnancy she had no intention of letting him be part of, and walked away from the only financial security she'd known for 3 years. She typed, "I don't know. Rachel, come to my place. Don't be alone right now." Serena almost said no. Almost told Rachel she needed space to process, to think, to figure out what came next. Then the baby kicked again, and she realized she didn't want to be alone. "Okay," she typed. "I'm coming." Rachel's apartment was in a different part of the city. Older building, smaller spaces. The kind of place where neighbors actually knew each other's names. Serena had always liked it there. It felt real in a way the house with Damien never had. Rachel took one look at her and pulled her inside. "You look awful," she said, which was possibly the most honest thing anyone had said to Serena in months. "I feel awful." "Sit. I'll make tea." Serena sank into Rachel's worn couch, the one they'd bought together in college, hauled up 4 flights of stairs, and refused to get rid of despite the fraying fabric. It felt like coming home. Rachel appeared a few minutes later with 2 mugs, setting one in front of Serena before curling up in the armchair across from her. "Tell me everything," Rachel said. So Serena did. The whole story, from walking into the conference room to walking out, leaving nothing out. Rachel listened without interrupting, face shifting through a dozen different expressions. When Serena finished, Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "You told him it might not be his," she said finally. "I asked him if it mattered." "Serena," What? It's true. Even if I told him yes, it wouldn't change anything. He'd still want the baby for the wrong reasons. Maybe. Rachel took a sip of tea. Or maybe you're so convinced he's incapable of change that you're not giving him a chance to prove you wrong. I gave him 3 years. You gave him 3 years of trying to be the wife he wanted. You never gave him a chance to be the father he might be. Serena felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy hormones made everything sharper, more intense. I can't risk it. Risk what? Letting him close enough to hurt this baby the way he hurt me. Rachel set down her mug. Okay, I hear you. But you need to hear me too. That man, whether you like it or not, is the father of your child. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday, this baby is going to want to know about him. And you're going to have to explain why you made the choices you made. I'll tell them the truth. Your truth, not his. Not theirs. Rachel leaned forward. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, but make sure you can live with this, because you don't get to take it back. Serena's hand found her stomach again. The baby was quiet now, settled. I can live with it, she said. But lying in Rachel's guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, she wasn't sure if she was telling the truth. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Serena woke up at 3 a.m. with her heart racing and her sheets soaked through with sweat. The dream had been vivid. Damien standing in a hospital room, holding a baby she couldn't see, walking away while she screamed for him to stop. She sat up carefully, one hand pressed to her chest, the other to her stomach where the baby was doing acrobatics. It's okay, she whispered. Just a dream. But her hands were shaking, and the apartment suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too empty. She'd been having the dreams more often lately. Different scenarios, same ending. Damien taking the baby, Damien finding her, Damien showing up with lawyers and court orders, and that cold determination he wore like armor. Her subconscious working overtime to punish her for decisions her conscious mind insisted were right. Rachel had gone back to her own life after those first few days. She'd offered to stay longer, but Serena had insisted she was fine. She had a job now, administrative work at a small marketing firm that didn't care about her maiden name or her married one. She had this apartment. She had a plan. She was fine, except she wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating properly despite Dr. Chen's lectures about nutrition, spent too much time checking her phone for messages that never came and jumping at every unexpected sound. The pregnancy was progressing normally. That's what Dr. Chen kept saying. 24 weeks now, viable if something went wrong, the baby moving constantly enough that Serena had started to feel like her body belonged to someone else. She'd felt the first real kick at 18 weeks and had reached for her phone to call Damien before remembering she wouldn't. That had hurt more than she'd expected. She'd bought baby things in dribs and drabs. A crib from a secondhand store that Rachel had helped her assemble. Tiny clothes from discount shops that she'd washed and folded with hands that didn't feel quite steady. A car seat still in its box because she didn't have a car yet and wasn't sure how she'd afford one. The financial settlement from Damien sat in her bank account, untouched. She'd opened a separate account just for it, hadn't transferred a single dollar to her regular checking. Using that money felt like admitting she needed him, and she'd rather struggle than give him that satisfaction. Pride, Rachel called it. Stupidity, more like. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. A text message. At 3 a.m, Serena's stomach dropped. She reached for it with fingers that felt numb. Unknown number. I know you said not to contact you. I'm breaking that rule. I need to know if you're okay. D. She stared at the message for a long time. Damien, who apparently still had her number even though she'd blocked his primary contact, who was awake at 3 a.m. thinking about her, or thinking about the baby. Probably the baby. She should delete it, block this number too, maintain the boundary she'd set. Instead, she typed, I'm fine. Don't contact me again. The response came within seconds. Are you safe? Do you need anything? Serena's throat tightened. She could picture him, sitting in his office probably, surrounded by paperwork and half-empty coffee cups, that crease between his eyebrows that showed up when he was worried about something. I'm safe. I have everything I need. A pause. Then, can we talk? Just once. Please. No. Serena. She blocked the number before he could finish the thought. Set the phone face down on the nightstand. lay back down and stared at the ceiling while the baby kicked and her heart refused to slow down. Sleep didn't come back. By the time dawn broke, she'd made a decision. She couldn't stay in this city. Couldn't keep looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows, waiting for Damien to show up despite her demands that he stay away. The divorce was final, the papers signed, but she'd never actually be free of him as long as she stayed within reach. She needed to leave. Rachel took the news about as well as Serena had expected. "You're running away," she said flatly. They were sitting in the coffee shop near Rachel's office, Serena nursing a decaf latte she didn't really want. "I'm making a fresh start." "Where?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere smaller, quieter. Somewhere I can afford to raise a baby on a single income without having to work 3 jobs. Rachel stirred her cappuccino with more force than necessary. "This is because of Damien. This is because of me. Because I need space to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's wife or someone's disappointment. You could figure that out here, with people who actually care about you." "Rachel, no, listen to me." Rachel set down her spoon. "I get it. I do. He hurt you. He made you feel worthless. You want to put as much distance between you and him as possible. But you're also 7 months pregnant, alone, and making decisions based on fear rather than what's actually best for you or that baby. I'm making decisions based on what I need. Are you? Or are you just so terrified he's going to find you and take the baby that you're willing to uproot your entire life?" The words hit harder than they should have. Serena looked down at her latte, at the foam dissolving into beige liquid. "Maybe both," she said quietly. Rachel's expression softened. "Serena, you're my best friend. I love you, but you're not thinking clearly right now. You're pregnant and scared and angry, and you're about to make a decision you can't undo." "I already made the decision I can't undo. This is just follow through." "It doesn't have to be. You could stay. You could let me help you. You could build a life here that has nothing to do with Damien Cruz. Except he's here. His empire is here. His family is here. Everywhere I go in this city, I'll see reminders of what I used to be, who I used to pretend to be." Serena met Rachel's eyes. "I need to go somewhere where I'm just me, where this baby is just mine, where we can start over without ghosts." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "Where are you thinking? Maybe Portland, or somewhere in Colorado. I don't know, somewhere with a lower cost of living and decent schools and no connection to any of this." "That's not a plan. That's just geography." "It's more of a plan than staying here and jumping every time my phone buzzes." "He texted you." Rachel's voice sharpened. "When?" "Last night, 3 in the morning, asking if I was okay." "What did you say?" "I told him I was fine and blocked the number." "And you don't think that's going to make him more worried, more likely to try to find you?" Serena had thought about that, about how Damien would interpret her silence, about whether cutting off all contact would give him peace of mind or drive him to track her down. "I can't control what he does," she said. "I can only control what I do." Which is apparently run away and hope he doesn't follow. "It's not running away if I'm moving towards something better." Rachel sighed. "Okay, fine. You want to leave, leave. But at least wait until after the baby is born. At least let me be there for the delivery. At least give yourself a few more weeks to make sure this is actually what you want and not just panic talking." The baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that Serena winced. "I'll think about it," she said. She didn't think about it. She spent the next 3 days researching cities, comparing costs, looking at job listings and rental prices and school ratings for a future that felt both distant and terrifyingly close. She made spreadsheets. She calculated budgets. She gave herself something to focus on besides the growing certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. Work was a blur. Her boss, Jennifer, had been understanding about the pregnancy, flexible hours, work-from-home options. No pressure to overextend herself. But Serena could see the calculation in her eyes, too. How long before maternity leave? How long before the new mother couldn't keep up with deadlines? How long before hiring her became more trouble than it was worth? She was replaceable here, too, just in a different way. On Thursday afternoon, she came home to find an envelope slipped under her apartment door. Thick, expensive paper. No return address. Her hands went cold. She picked it up carefully, like it might explode, carried it to the small dining table she'd bought at a furniture outlet, sat down before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a check. The check was made out to her for $50,000, signed by Damien in that precise handwriting he'd probably learned at some expensive boarding school. The note was handwritten too. Brief. I know you don't want my money. I know you don't want anything from me. But if you won't take it for yourself, take it for the baby. For medical bills or furniture or whatever you need. No strings, no expectations. Just please let me do this one thing. D. Serena stared at the check until the numbers blurred. $50,000. More than she'd make in 2 years at her current job. Enough to cover every expense, every worry, every late-night panic about how she'd afford diapers and formula and daycare. All she had to do was accept it. All she had to do was let him help. She picked up her phone and dialed before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the first ring. Serena. His voice hit her like a physical thing. She hadn't heard it since the conference room, and she'd forgotten how it could sound. Not cold, not controlled, but raw and uncertain. How did you find me? She asked. Does it matter? Yes. A pause. I have resources. I used them. I'm sorry. You had someone follow me. I had someone make sure you were safe. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Serena looked at the check on her table. You can't do this. You can't send me money and track me down and act like you have any right to be part of this. I'm not trying to be part of anything. I'm trying to make sure you and the baby are okay. We're fine. You're living in a one-bedroom apartment in a building with broken security doors. You're working a job that barely covers rent. You haven't used a single dollar of the settlement money. His voice was calm, factual, devastating in its accuracy. That's not fine, Serena. That's struggling. How would you know what I've... She stopped. You've been watching my bank accounts. I have access to the joint accounts we closed. I can see what you're not spending. That's a violation of my privacy. I know. The simple admission caught her off guard. No excuses, no justification, just acknowledgement of exactly what he'd done. Why? She asked. Why are you doing this? Because I can't sleep. Because I wake up at 3 in the morning wondering if you're okay, if you have enough to eat, if you're safe. Because I destroyed the best thing in my life and I can't fix it. But maybe I can at least make sure you and the baby don't suffer because of my mistakes. Serena closed her eyes. I don't want your money. I know. Take it anyway. Damien, please. The word cracked on the way out. I'm not asking for access. I'm not asking for custody or visitation or any claim on the baby. I'm just asking you to let me help. Let me do this one decent thing. The baby was moving again, restless. Serena's hand found her stomach automatically. If I take this, she said slowly, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't give you rights. It doesn't change what happened between us. I know. I'm still leaving the city. I'm still building a life that doesn't include you. I know. And you're still not going to know where I am or have any contact with this baby. Silence on his end, long enough that she thought the connection had dropped. Okay, he said finally, if that's what you need. That's what I need. Then take the money, use it for the baby, give them a better start than what you can provide alone. She should refuse, should tear up the check and mail it back to him with a note telling him to leave her alone forever. Instead, she said, okay. Okay? I'll take the money for the baby. But Damien, this is the last time. No more contact, no more tracking me down, no more anything. I understand. Do you? Because this is it. This is goodbye. Permanently. Another long silence. I understand, he repeated. Take care of yourself, Serena. And the baby. He hung up before she could respond. Serena sat at her dining table holding a phone that felt too heavy and a check that felt like a grenade. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had happened. Cars passed. People walked by her window. The world kept turning. And somewhere across town, Damien Cruz sat in an office or a house or wherever he went to be alone, and let go of the last thread connecting him to the woman he'd destroyed. She deposited the check the next day. Hated herself for it. Hated that she needed it. Hated that accepting it felt like losing some battle she'd been fighting. But she did it anyway. With the money came options. She could afford to take maternity leave without panicking about bills. Could buy the things she'd been putting off. A decent stroller, a changing table that wasn't held together with duct tape, baby clothes that weren't thirds hand. Could start looking at moving costs and deposits and first last month rent in cities far from here. Rachel noticed the change immediately. "You took his money," she said over dinner at Serena's apartment. They were eating Thai takeout straight from the containers because Serena didn't own enough plates yet. "How did you bought an actual crib, like new, not the death trap you found at that garage sale." Rachel gestured with her chopsticks. "So either you won the lottery or you cashed his check." "I needed it. I'm not judging. I think you should have taken the settlement money months ago. I'm just asking, does this change anything?" "Like what?" "Like whether you're planning to disappear completely, like whether you're going to let him know when the baby is born, like whether you've thought at all about what happens when this kid is old enough to ask questions you can't answer." Serena set down her pad Thai. "I've thought about it." "And? And I still don't have good answers, but I'm doing the best I can with an impossible situation." "You know what would make it less impossible? Talking to him. Actually talking, not just exchanging checks and accusations, figuring out if there's any way to co-parent that doesn't involve you running away and him hiring private investigators." "There isn't." "How do you know if you won't even try?" "Because I know him, Rachel. I spent 3 years married to him. I know exactly how he operates. He'll say whatever he needs to say to get what he wants, and what he wants is control over this baby, over me, over everything." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "What if you're wrong? What if I'm right?" They finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. Rachel left around 9, hugging Serena at the door with the kind of fierceness that said things she wasn't putting into words. Alone again, Serena cleaned up the containers and settled onto her couch with a book she wasn't really reading. The baby was active tonight, movements visible through her shirt. She watched her stomach shift and ripple, fascinated and terrified in equal measure. In 8 weeks, give or take, this baby would be born, would become a real person with needs and wants and questions she'd have to answer. In 8 weeks, she'd be someone's mother. The thought was paralyzing. Her phone buzzed. Not a call this time, just an alert. Email from Dr. Chen's office reminding her about her appointment next week. Routine checkup. All the standard tests to make sure everything was progressing normally. She marked it in her calendar and tried not to think about how she'd be sitting in that waiting room alone again. How she'd hear the heartbeat and see the ultrasound and have nobody to share it with except Rachel, who'd already given up half her weekends to be supportive. This was her choice. She'd made it knowingly, but knowing it was right didn't make it easier. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and doctor appointments and anxious preparation. Serena's boss had been surprisingly supportive about the impending maternity leave, even offering to hold her position for 3 months if she wanted to come back. It was more grace than she'd expected. The baby was measuring perfectly. That's what Dr. Chen said at the 30-week appointment. Good weight, good movement, everything developing exactly as it should. Serena should be relieved, should be excited. Instead, she felt hollow. "Are you sleeping?" Dr. Chen asked, studying Serena with concerned eyes. "Some." "That's not an answer. How many hours per night?" 4 maybe. 5 if I'm lucky. Dr. Chen made a note in her chart. "That's not enough. Your body needs rest. The baby needs rest. I can prescribe something if no medications." Serena had researched this, knew the risks. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look exhausted and stressed. Is there something going on that I should know about?" "Everything. Nothing. The same impossible tangle of decisions and consequences." "I'm just anxious," Serena said, "about the birth, about being a single parent. Normal stuff." Dr. Chen didn't look convinced. "Have you considered therapy? Someone to talk to about the anxiety?" "I have a friend." "A friend is great. A trained professional is better, especially for prenatal depression, which is what this is starting to look like." Prenatal depression. A label Serena didn't want, a diagnosis that made her feelings real instead of something she could push through with enough willpower. "I'll think about it," she said. She didn't think about it. She went home and threw herself into planning the move she still hadn't fully committed to. Portland looked good on paper. Lower costs, decent job market, far enough from Damien that she'd never accidentally run into him at a coffee shop. She'd found a few apartments in her price range, put in applications, started boxing up the few possessions she'd accumulated. Rachel helped on weekends, packing books and kitchen supplies, while shooting Serena worried looks she pretended not to notice. You don't have to do this, Rachel said for the 100th time, taping up a box labeled miscellaneous. I know, but you're doing it anyway. I need a fresh start. You need therapy and sleep and to stop running from something you can't actually escape. Serena looked up from the box she was packing. What's that supposed to mean? It means Damien is always going to be that baby's father. Moving to Portland doesn't change biology. It doesn't erase history. It just makes it harder for everyone involved. Harder for who? For Damien? He made his choice. And you're making yours. I'm just asking you to think about who pays the price for it. The baby kicked hard, almost like punctuation. Serena went back to packing without answering. 3 days before her 32nd week appointment, Serena's water glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. Just stress, probably. Pregnancy making her clumsy. She bent down carefully to clean it up, and that's when she felt it. Wetness between her legs. More than it should be. She stood up too fast, head spinning, hand automatically going to her stomach. No, not now. Too early? She grabbed her phone and called Dr. Chen's emergency line. Explained the symptoms with a voice that didn't sound like hers. Was told to get to the hospital immediately. Rachel drove her. Serena didn't remember calling her, but suddenly she was there, helping Serena into the car, driving too fast through traffic while Serena tried not to panic. It's okay, Rachel kept saying. It's going to be okay. 32 weeks is viable. Babies are born at 32 weeks all the time. Serena knew the statistics, knew that 32 weeks meant probable NICU time, possible complications, a tiny baby who wasn't ready for the world yet. She also knew that if something went wrong, she'd be facing it alone. At the hospital, everything moved too fast and too slow at once. Triage, examination, Dr. Chen appearing with steady hands and calm voice. Tests, monitoring, the baby's heartbeat on the speakers sounding too fast, or maybe that was Serena's imagination. Your water didn't break, Dr. Chen said finally, but you're having contractions. Early labor. We need to stop it if we can. Medications? IV fluids? Bed rest orders. The contractions slowed but didn't stop completely. Dr. Chen's face showed carefully controlled concern. We're going to keep you overnight for observation, she said. Maybe longer. I need to make sure we can stabilize this. You have people who can bring you things, stay with you? I have Rachel. What about the baby's father? The question shouldn't have hurt. Serena had been expecting it. He's not involved. Dr. Chen nodded like she'd expected that answer. Okay, well, I'll check on you in a few hours. Try to rest. The more calm you can stay, the better for the baby. Rest. Right. Rachel stayed until visiting hours ended, promising to come back first thing in the morning with clothes and toiletries and anything else Serena needed. Then it was just Serena and the monitors and the too bright hospital room. The baby had settled down, movements gentler now. Serena's hand stayed on her stomach, feeling each flutter and shift. Not yet, she whispered. You're not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Her phone was on the bedside table. She'd turned it to silent, but she could see notifications lighting up the screen. Probably Rachel checking in. Probably work wondering why she hadn't shown up. Probably not Damien, because Damien didn't know she was here. Didn't know his baby was trying to come too early. Didn't know that Serena was lying in a hospital bed trying not to fall apart. She picked up the phone before she could stop herself. Pulled up his contact, the one she'd deleted and re-added and deleted again a dozen times. Her finger hovered over the call button. What would she even say? I'm in the hospital and I'm scared and I don't want to do this alone? That was the truth. But the truth didn't change anything. She put the phone down, turned it face down so she wouldn't see it light up, and lay there in the dark, one hand on her stomach, trying to breathe through the fear of bringing a life into the world with nobody beside her but ghosts and regrets. The contractions stopped after 36 hours of medication and monitoring. Dr. Chen called it a win, though her expression suggested she was reserving judgment. Serena was released with strict orders for bed rest, reduced work hours, and weekly checkups that would track every possible complication. You scared us, Dr. Chen said, as Serena signed the discharge papers. Another few hours and we might not have been able to stop the labor. You need to take this seriously. I will. I mean it, Serena. No stress, no heavy lifting. No pretending you're fine when you're not. This baby needs more time, and your body is telling you it's at its limit. Serena nodded, too tired to argue. Rachel appeared with the overnight bag and a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The drive back to the apartment was quiet. Rachel kept glancing over like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, as she pulled into the parking lot, she turned off the engine and just sat there. "You need to tell him," Rachel said. "No." "Serena, you almost went into labor at 32 weeks, alone, in a hospital room with nobody but me. What if I hadn't been available? What if something had gone wrong?" "But it didn't. This time. What about next time? What about the actual delivery? What about the days and weeks and years after when you're raising this kid completely alone because you're too stubborn to admit you might need help?" Serena's hands clenched in her lap. "I don't need his help." "Maybe not. But that baby might. And you don't get to make that choice for them." "I'm their mother. That's exactly the choice I get to make." Rachel looked at her for a long moment. "I love you. You know that. But you're so busy protecting this baby from Damien that you're not seeing how you're also protecting yourself. From having to admit you still care what happens to him. From having to face that maybe walking away didn't fix everything you thought it would. That's not... When you were in that hospital bed, you picked up your phone. I saw you. You almost called him." Serena's throat closed. "I didn't, though, because you're scared. Not of him, of yourself. Of what it would mean to let him back in, even a little bit." "Rachel, I'm not saying you have to reconcile. I'm not saying you have to let him be part of your life. I'm just saying that baby deserves to know their father exists, that he wanted them, that he's capable of more than the worst thing he ever said to you." Serena stared out the windshield at the apartment building, at the life she'd built from scraps and determination and borrowed money from a man she was trying to erase. "He doesn't deserve to know them," she said quietly. "Maybe not, but they deserve to know him." Rachel helped her upstairs without saying anything else. Got her settled on the couch with water and crackers and the remote control. Made sure all the numbers were programmed into Serena's phone: doctor, hospital, Rachel's cell, Rachel's work line. "I can stay," Rachel offered. "Take a few days off. Make sure you're actually resting." "I'll be fine." "Serena, I need to be alone right now. Please." Rachel looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she just kissed Serena's forehead and left. The apartment felt too quiet after she was gone. Serena lay on the couch with one hand on her stomach and tried not to think about Rachel's words, about the phone in her hand in that hospital room, about the fact that some part of her had wanted Damien there, even knowing everything she knew. The baby was calm today, movements gentle and reassuring. Serena closed her eyes and focused on the rhythm of it, the proof that she wasn't actually alone, even when it felt like it. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but the preview showed it was from her boss, Jennifer. "Rachel told me what happened. Take all the time you need. Your job will be here when you're ready." Serena typed back, "Thank you. I'll keep you updated." Another buzz, this time from a number she didn't recognize. "Unknown. I heard you were in the hospital. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" Her heart stopped. She stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Damien. Somehow he knew. Her fingers moved before her brain could catch up. "How did you—" "Unknown. Rachel called me. She's worried about you." Serena was going to kill Rachel, slowly, painfully. She had no right. "Unknown. She cares about you. She thinks you need help. She's not wrong. I'm fine. The baby is fine. Stay out of it. Unknown. I can't." Those 2 words sat on her screen like an accusation. She could feel her pulse in her throat. "You don't have a choice." "Unknown. Serena, please, just let me know you're okay. That's all I'm asking." She should block this number too. Should tell Rachel to never ever contact Damien again. Should maintain the boundaries she'd set for good reasons. Instead, she typed, "We're both okay. The contractions stopped. I'm on bed rest for the next few weeks. That's all you get to know." The response came fast. "Thank you." Then, "If you need anything—" "I don't." She blocked the number before he could respond. Threw the phone onto the coffee table harder than necessary. The baby jumped at the sudden movement, and Serena immediately felt guilty. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to do the right thing here." But she wasn't sure anymore what the right thing was. Wasn't sure if protecting her baby from Damien was actually protection or just punishment wearing a different name. The weeks crawled by. Bed rest turned out to be less restful than it sounded. Serena spent her days on the couch or in bed, working remotely when she could focus, staring at the ceiling when she couldn't. Rachel came by every other day with groceries and company and careful observations about how Serena looked tired, stressed, not okay. "You should reconsider Portland," Rachel said one afternoon. They were sitting on Serena's couch, Rachel folding tiny baby clothes while Serena pretended to read. "At least until after the birth. You can't move across the country on bed rest." "I know." "So you're staying." "For now." Rachel set down an impossibly small onesie. "Has he contacted you again?" Serena didn't need to ask who he was. "No. You? He calls me sometimes, asks how you're doing, if you need anything, if the baby is okay." "Rachel, I don't give him details. I just tell him you're managing. But Serena, he's worried. Actually worried. This isn't some power play or control thing. He genuinely cares what happens to you." "He cares about the baby." "Maybe. But I think he cares about you too, more than you want to believe." Serena picked at a loose thread on her blanket. "It doesn't matter what he cares about. We're done. The marriage is over. He doesn't get to be worried about me anymore. Being divorced doesn't mean he stops having feelings. His feelings aren't my problem." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Do you still love him?" The question landed like a punch. Serena looked up sharply. "What?" "It's a simple question. Do you still love him?" "No." "You answered too fast." "Because the answer is obvious. You don't love someone who makes you feel worthless." "That's not what I asked. I asked if you still love him, not if you should, not if it's smart, just if you do." Serena's hands found her stomach, that automatic gesture that had become reflex. The baby was moving, lazy rolls that she could see shifting her shirt. "I love who I thought he was," she said finally. "The man I married, the one who existed for about 6 months before the empire became more important than I was. But that man doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. Or maybe he's just as broken as you are and doesn't know how to fix it." "I'm not broken." "Serena," Rachel's voice was gentle. "You're lying on a couch at 34 weeks pregnant, alone, planning to raise a baby by yourself because you're too scared to let anyone help you. You haven't touched the settlement money except for the one check Damien sent directly. You barely sleep. You won't go to therapy. You're preparing to move to a city where you don't know anyone to escape a man you claim you don't care about anymore." She paused. "That sounds pretty broken to me." Serena felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy hormones made everything harder, everything sharper. "I'm doing my best," she whispered. "I know you are. But your best doesn't have to mean doing everything alone." After Rachel left, Serena lay in the growing darkness and let herself think about the question she'd avoided answering honestly. Did she still love Damien? The truth was complicated. She loved the memory of who he'd been. Loved the moments when he'd let his guard down and been just Damien instead of Damien Cruz, empire builder and ruthless businessman. She loved the way he'd looked at her in the beginning, like she was something precious he'd found and wanted to keep safe. But she also hated him. Hated what he'd said to her. Hated how he'd reduced her to a function instead of a person. Hated that she'd spent 3 years trying to be enough and had only succeeded in making herself smaller. Love and hate weren't opposites. She'd learned that in her marriage. They were twisted together, inseparable, two sides of the same coin you couldn't spend. The baby kicked hard, and Serena smiled despite herself. "You're the only simple thing in my life right now," she said to her stomach. "Please stay that way." At her 36-week appointment, Dr. Chen declared her stable enough to ease up on the bed rest. Not back to normal activity, but she could move around more, go out for short walks, start preparing properly for the delivery. "We're in the safe zone now," Dr. Chen said, pulling off her gloves after the examination. "If you go into labor, we won't stop it. You're far enough along that the baby should be fine." "Should be." Medicine's favorite hedge. "What about the plan?" Serena asked. "For the delivery?" "You're still planning to go through with it alone?" "Yes." Dr. Chen made a note in the chart. "Okay. We'll have you pre-register at the hospital. When labor starts, you call me and come straight in. We'll get you settled and monitor progress. You said you have a birth plan?" Serena had spent weeks writing and rewriting it. What she wanted, what she didn't want, who was allowed in the room, who wasn't. It was thorough, detailed, left no room for surprises. I have it. Good. Bring it with you. And Serena, Dr. Chen's voice softened. You don't have to do this alone. I know you want to. I know you have reasons. But labor is intense. Having support makes a real difference. I have Rachel. Rachel is great. But think about whether there's anyone else. Anyone who might want to be there. Serena knew who she meant. Didn't acknowledge it. I'll think about it, she lied. That night, she couldn't sleep. The baby was active, doing gymnastics that made her whole stomach shift and roll. She got up carefully, moved to the window, looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Damien was probably awake too, in his office or his house or wherever he went to avoid sleeping. Maybe thinking about the baby he'd never met. Maybe not thinking about Serena at all. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she'd blocked and unblocked so many times she'd lost count. Her finger hovered over it. One call. That's all it would take. One call to tell him the baby was coming soon, that he had a few weeks left to be whatever version of a father he was capable of being. One call to admit that Rachel was right, that she was scared, that doing this alone was harder than she'd thought it would be. One call to open a door she'd spent months sealing shut. She put the phone down, stepped away from it like it might bite. The baby settled finally, and Serena went back to bed. But sleep didn't come. Just hours of staring at the ceiling while her mind ran in circles she couldn't escape. At 37 weeks, the Portland apartment stopped responding to her emails. The job applications went nowhere. The plan she'd built started crumbling at the edges, and Serena couldn't find the energy to shore it up. Rachel noticed. Of course she noticed. You're not leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Not right away? Maybe after the baby is older, more stable. Or maybe you're realizing that running away doesn't actually solve anything. Serena didn't argue, just kept folding the baby clothes Rachel had brought over, tiny sleepers and onesies in soft colors. He asked about you again, Rachel said carefully. Serena's hands stilled. What did you tell him? That you're close, that the baby could come any day now, that you're as ready as anyone ever is. Rachel, I didn't tell him where you're delivering. I didn't tell him your due date. I just gave him the basics. Because he asked, and because I think he deserves to at least know that much. You think he deserves a lot of things. I think you're both making this harder than it needs to be. I think he made terrible mistakes and said unforgivable things. I also think he's spent the last 6 months paying for it in ways you're not seeing because you won't look. Serena set down the clothes. What ways? He calls me once a week, like clockwork. Always the same questions. Is she okay? Is the baby okay? Does she need anything? He doesn't ask where you are, doesn't ask to see you, just wants to know you're safe. Rachel paused. That's not control, Serena. That's guilt. That's regret. That's a man who knows he destroyed something and can't figure out how to live with it. Good. He should feel guilty. And when does the guilt become enough? When does the punishment end? When do you let yourself admit that maybe, possibly, he's capable of change? People like Damien don't change. People like Damien are just people. Complicated, flawed, capable of terrible things, and also capable of growth. You're not giving him a chance to prove which one he chooses to be. The baby kicked hard enough that Serena winced. Rachel noticed. You okay? Fine, just active today. But that night, the contractions started again. Not the gentle Braxton Hicks she'd been having for weeks. Real ones, consistent, painful. Serena lay in bed timing them with an app on her phone. 7 minutes apart, then 6, then 5. She called Dr. Chen's service at 2 in the morning. How far apart? The on-call nurse asked. 5 minutes, lasting about 45 seconds each. How long has this been going on? 2 hours. You need to come in, now. Serena called Rachel, got voicemail, called again. Nothing. Panic started creeping in at the edges. She called Dr. Chen's service back. My ride isn't answering. Should I wait or... Call an ambulance if you need to. Don't wait. If your water breaks or the contractions get closer than 3 minutes apart, you need to be here. Serena hung up, stared at her phone. She could call a cab, could call an ambulance, could wait and see if Rachel called back, or she could call the one person who would answer, who would drop everything, who'd been waiting for months for exactly this. Her finger moved before her brain could stop it. The phone rang once. "Serena?" Damien's voice was sharp, alert. He'd been awake. "I need help." The words came out smaller than she meant them to. "I'm in labor and Rachel isn't answering and I need to get to the hospital." "I'm coming. What's your address?" She told him. Hated herself for it. Hated that she needed him. Hated that some part of her was relieved. 20 minutes, he said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Are you okay? Is the baby—" "We're fine. Just come." She hung up before he could say anything else. Then she sat on her couch, overnight bag already packed by the door, and tried to breathe through contractions that were getting worse. 19 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Damien standing in her hallway, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, wearing jeans and a t-shirt she'd never seen him in. He looked younger like this, less controlled, more human. His eyes went immediately to her stomach, then to her face. "Okay," he said. "Let's get you to the hospital." He picked up her bag without asking, offered his arm to steady her, didn't ask questions or make demands or try to take control, just helped her to his car and drove through empty streets while Serena breathed through contractions and tried not to think about what this meant. At the hospital, he stayed in the background, let the nurses take over, signed in as her emergency contact when she couldn't focus enough to do it herself, stood against the wall while they got her settled in a delivery room. Dr. Chen appeared, calm and efficient, checking dilation and asking about pain levels and preparing for what was coming. "You're at 6 centimeters, she said, moving fast. This baby is ready." Serena nodded, too focused on breathing to respond. Dr. Chen glanced at Damien. "Dad?" He looked at Serena. "I don't know." "Out," Serena managed. "He needs to wait outside." Something flickered across Damien's face, hurt maybe, or resignation. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." He left. The door closed behind him, and Serena was alone with the medical staff and the baby who was coming whether she was ready or not. Labor was everything the book said it would be and worse. Pain that rewrote her understanding of what her body could endure. Hours that felt like days. Moments of terror when the monitors beeped wrong, or Dr. Chen's face showed concern she tried to hide. Rachel finally showed up around hour 4, panicked and apologetic. "My phone died and I didn't realize, and I'm so sorry." She stopped when she saw Serena. "Oh, honey." "It hurts." "I know. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere." Rachel held her hand through the worst of it, breathed with her, let Serena squeeze her fingers until they turned white. But when Dr. Chen finally said it was time to push, when everything came down to this final impossible task, Rachel wasn't who Serena wanted. "Is he still here?" Serena asked between contractions. Rachel understood immediately. "You want him?" "I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I'll check." Rachel disappeared into the hallway. Came back a minute later. "He's been out there the whole time, hasn't moved. Do you want me to get him?" Serena closed her eyes, tried to think through the pain and exhaustion and fear. "Yes," she whispered. "Get him." Damien came through the door like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. His eyes found Serena immediately, and she saw fear in them. Real fear, the kind that had nothing to do with business deals or power plays. "You can stay," she said through gritted teeth as another contraction built. "But in the corner, just don't talk." He nodded and moved to the far side of the room. Rachel positioned herself on Serena's other side, and Dr. Chen settled at the foot of the bed with the calm focus of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "All right, Serena," Dr. Chen said. "Next contraction, I need you to push." What followed was brutal. There was no other word for it. Pushing was agony that made the contractions feel like practice. Serena heard herself making sounds she didn't recognize, felt Rachel's hand in hers, and heard her voice saying things that might have been encouragement. From the corner, Damien stood frozen. She caught glimpses of him between pushes, hands clenched at his sides, face pale, looking like he wanted to do something but had no idea what. "Good," Dr. Chen was saying. "That's good. One more like that." Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the pushing and the pain and Dr. Chen's steady voice and the certainty that this was either going to end or kill her. I can see the head, Dr. Chen said. One more big push, Serena. Come on. Serena bore down with everything she had left. Felt something shift, then release, then a cry. Sharp and angry and absolutely perfect. It's a girl, Dr. Chen announced, lifting a tiny, furious creature covered in vernix and blood. You have a daughter. A daughter. Serena watched through tears as they cleaned the baby quickly, checked her over, wrapped her in a blanket. The crying didn't stop, loud, insistent, the sound of a person announcing their presence to a world that hadn't asked for their opinion. Then the nurse placed her on Serena's chest, and everything else fell away. She was so small, impossibly small, with a scrunched-up face and dark hair plastered to her head and eyes that were trying to open against the bright lights. Hi, Serena whispered. Hi, baby. I'm your mom. The baby's crying settled into whimpers. Her tiny fist curled around Serena's finger with surprising strength. She's perfect, Rachel said, crying openly now. Serena, she's perfect. She's... From the corner, Damien made a sound. Serena looked up to find him staring at the baby with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Wonder, maybe, or devastation, or both at once. Their eyes met across the room. She saw the question he couldn't ask. You want to see her? Serena heard herself say. He moved forward slowly, like approaching something fragile that might break if he got too close. Stopped a few feet from the bed. She's beautiful, he said, voice rough. She looks like you. She has your nose. Does she? He leaned in slightly, studying the tiny face. I can't tell. She's so small. 6 pounds, 4 ounces, the nurse said, making notes on a chart. Perfectly healthy, good color, strong lungs, all her fingers and toes. Damien's hand came up like he might reach out. Then he caught himself and let it fall. Can I? He stopped, started again. May I hold her? If that's okay. If you're comfortable with... Okay, Serena said. She didn't know why she said it. Maybe because he'd asked instead of assumed. Maybe because the baby was real now, not an abstract concept to fight over. Maybe because she was too exhausted to hold on to anger when she could barely hold on to consciousness. Rachel helped her shift the baby into Damien's arms. He took her carefully, supporting her head the way the birthing class videos had demonstrated. His hands looked enormous against her tiny body. The baby opened her eyes fully for the first time, dark blue, unfocused, seeing nothing and everything at once. Damien stared down at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, and something on his face cracked open. The control he always maintained, the armor he wore against everything, it just fell away. Hi, he said softly. He stopped, looked at Serena. The question was clear. Serena's throat closed. She could tell him no. Could say he was nothing to this baby. Could take back the moment before it became something she couldn't undo. Instead, she said, You can tell her, if you want. Damien looked back at the baby. I'm your dad. I know you don't know what that means yet. I'm not sure I know either, but I'm going to try to figure it out, if your mom lets me. The baby yawned, tiny and perfect, completely unimpressed by the drama surrounding her entrance into the world. Rachel was crying again. Serena felt her own tears tracking down her face, but couldn't find the energy to wipe them away. After a minute, Dr. Chen cleared her throat gently. I need to finish up here, and then we'll move you to recovery. Dad, you'll need to step out for a few minutes. Damien handed the baby back to Serena with visible reluctance. Thank you, he said, for letting me... Thank you. He left. Rachel squeezed Serena's hand. You did good, Rachel said. Which part? All of it. The next few hours were a blur of checks and monitoring and attempts to get the baby to nurse. She latched eventually, after much frustration on both sides, and Serena felt a wave of relief so intense it made her dizzy. They moved her to a recovery room around dawn. The baby slept in a bassinet next to the bed, swaddled tight, making small sounds that probably meant nothing but felt significant. Rachel had gone home to sleep, promising to come back later with supplies. The room was quiet except for the baby's breathing and the monitors beeping steadily. There was a soft knock at the door. Come in, Serena said. Damien entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. He probably hadn't. I didn't know if you'd want company, he said. But I brought coffee, Real coffee, not hospital coffee. I can't have caffeine while I'm nursing. Oh, right. I should have. I'll take it back to some. It's fine. Sit, just for a minute. He set both cups on the table and took the chair next to her bed. They sat in awkward silence, both watching the baby sleep. What's her name? Damien asked finally. I don't know yet. I had a list, but now that she's here, none of them seem right. Can I suggest something? Sure. Emma. It means whole, complete, universal. Serena looked at the baby. Emma. It did seem to fit somehow. Emma Grace, she said. Grace was my grandmother's name. Emma Grace Vale, Damien tested it. It's beautiful. Emma Grace Vale Crew, Serena corrected before she could stop herself. The words hung in the air between them. You don't have to do that, Damien said carefully. Give her my name. Not if you don't want to. She's your daughter. She should have your name, part of it anyway. Serena, I'm not doing this for you, she said quickly. I'm doing it for her, so she doesn't have to grow up wondering why half her identity is missing. So when she asks about you someday, I can tell her that from the beginning I acknowledged who her father was. Damien was quiet for a long moment. When she asks about me, what are you going to tell her? I don't know yet. The truth, probably. Some version of it. Which is? Serena looked at him. Really looked at him. At the exhaustion in his face and the careful way he was holding himself and the fear that he was trying not to show. That you wanted her, Serena said. That you made mistakes. That you hurt me badly enough that I had to leave. That I don't know if you're capable of being the father she deserves, but I'm willing to let you try to prove you are. That's more than I expected. It's more than you deserve, but Emma deserves a chance to know you, to decide for herself what kind of relationship she wants with you. I can't make that choice for her. What about us? Damien asked. Do we get a chance to figure out what we are now? We're her parents. That's what we are. Nothing more. Serena, I mean it, Damien. Whatever we were, whatever we could have been, that's done. You made sure of that. But we can be civil. We can co-parent. We can give Emma two parents who don't hate each other, even if we're not together. He nodded slowly. Okay, if that's what you want. It's what I can handle right now. Emma made a small sound in her sleep. Both of them looked at her automatically, that new parent hypervigilance already kicking in. I'm sorry, Damien said quietly, for what I said to you, for how I made you feel, for taking so long to realize what I was destroying. I know sorry doesn't fix it. I know I can't take it back, but I need you to know that I regret it every day, every single day. Serena felt tears threatening again. It doesn't change anything. I know. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to how it was. I know that too. Then why say it? Because you deserve to hear it, because it's true, because maybe someday it will matter, even if it doesn't right now. Emma woke up then, small face scrunching before she started crying. Serena reached for her automatically, brought her close, tried to soothe her. She's probably hungry again, Serena said. Do you want me to leave? She should say yes, should maintain boundaries, should not let him see her like this, vulnerable and exposed and trying to figure out how to feed a baby while everything hurt. You can stay, she said, if you want, but turn around. He did, facing the window while Serena got Emma latched. Once the baby was settled and eating, she told him it was okay to look. This is strange, Damien said. Being here, seeing you like this. I feel like I should be doing something, but I don't know what. You could tell me what you've been doing for the last 6 months. Working, mostly. Trying not to think about you. Failing at trying not to think about you. Rachel said you called her. Every week. She probably told you that too. She did. I didn't believe her at first. Thought she was trying to make me feel guilty. Were you? Guilty. Serena adjusted Emma slightly. Sometimes. Other times I was so angry I couldn't see straight. And sometimes I didn't feel anything at all, which was somehow worse. I went to therapy, Damien said abruptly. After you left. Marcus suggested it. Said I was impossible to work with, and if I didn't deal with whatever was broken inside me, I was going to destroy the company along with everything else. Did it help? Some. Enough to realize that what I said to you, that wasn't about you being broken. That was about me being terrified that if I couldn't control everything, I'd lose everything. And then I lost you anyway because I was too busy controlling to actually love you the way you deserved. Serena didn't know what to say to that, so she focused on Emma, who was eating enthusiastically and making small, satisfied sounds. She's good at this, Damien observed. Natural talent. Must get it from you. I'm terrible at everything that requires patience. You ran an empire. That requires patience. That's different. Business I can predict, control. People... He stopped. People are harder. Emma finished eating and immediately fell asleep again, milk-drunk and content. Serena burped her carefully, then settled her back in the bassinet. You're good at that, Damien said. You've been a mother for 6 hours and you already look like you know what you're doing. I don't. I'm terrified I'm going to break her. You won't. You don't know that. I know you. You're strong, determined. You walked away from everything to protect her. You're not going to let her down now. The words settled into Serena's chest, uncomfortable and warm at the same time. A nurse came in to check vitals and take Emma for some newborn screening. Damien stood to leave. I should go, he said. Let you rest. Damien, he turned back. Thank you. For coming when I called, for bringing me here, for not making this harder than it already is. I meant what I said. In the conference room, I don't deserve to know her. I know that. But if you're giving me a chance anyway, I'm not going to waste it. He left before she could respond. Serena lay back against the pillows and closed her eyes. Her body hurt everywhere. Her emotions were a tangled mess she didn't have the energy to unpack. And somewhere down the hall, her daughter was being poked and prodded by medical staff, while her ex-husband probably sat in a waiting room trying to figure out what came next. This wasn't how she'd imagined any of this going. But maybe that was okay. Maybe life didn't have to match the plan to still work out. Maybe. The hospital kept them for 2 days. Standard monitoring, making sure Emma was eating well and Serena was recovering properly. Rachel came and went, bringing clothes and snacks and excitement that made everything feel more real. Damien showed up every morning with coffee. Serena couldn't drink and sat quietly in the corner unless invited closer. On the second day, he brought a gift bag. You didn't have to do that, Serena said. I know, but I wanted to. Inside was a stuffed rabbit, soft and perfectly sized for tiny hands. And a book. A collection of stories Serena recognized from her own childhood. My mother used to read these to me, Damien said, before she died. I thought, maybe you'd want to read them to Emma someday. Serena felt her throat tighten. Damien never talked about his mother. In 3 years of marriage, he'd mentioned her maybe twice. Thank you, she said. Thank you. Emma was in his arms. Serena had let him hold her more often, watching him slowly learn how to support her head, how to soothe her when she fussed. He was awkward at it, uncertain, but he tried. That counted for something. I've been thinking, Damien said, eyes on Emma, about what happens next, custody, support, how we make this work. Okay. I want to be part of her life, as much as you'll let me. I know I don't have a right to ask for that, but I'm asking anyway. What does part of her life mean to you? I don't know. Whatever you're comfortable with. Visits, maybe. Once a week at first, more as she gets older. I want to know her. I want her to know me. I want to be the kind of father who shows up. Serena studied him. This isn't about your legacy? About having an heir for your empire? No, this is about having a daughter, a person. Someone I want to know for who she is, not what she represents. And if she grows up and wants nothing to do with your business, if she wants to be an artist or a teacher or something that has nothing to do with cruise industries, then I support her in that. Help her become whoever she wants to be. Because she's not an asset, Serena. She's a child, my child. And I already love her more than I thought I could love anything. Emma chose that moment to spit up on his shoulder. He barely reacted, just grabbed a burp cloth and cleaned it up like he'd been doing it for years instead of days. You're getting better at that, Serena observed. YouTube videos. I've watched approximately 100 hours of parenting tutorials in the past 2 days. Seriously? I don't know how to do this, so I'm learning. That's what you do when something matters, right? You figure it out. Serena felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready for that, but maybe the beginning of understanding. The recognition that people could change if they actually wanted to, if they put in the work. Okay, she said, we'll figure out a custody arrangement. Supervised visits at first, at my place. Then we'll see how it goes. Supervised by who? Rachel. Or me. Someone who can make sure you're actually taking care of her and not treating her like a business project. Fair enough? And Damien, if you hurt her the way you hurt me, if you make her feel like she's not enough, if you do anything that makes her doubt her worth, I will take her and you will never see her again. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Emma was asleep in his arms, completely peaceful. Damien looked down at her with an expression Serena couldn't quite read. She's everything, he said quietly. I understand now why you left, why you were willing to lose everything to protect her. Because she's everything. They were discharged on a Wednesday morning. Rachel drove them home, Serena in the back seat next to Emma's car seat, watching her daughter sleep through the chaos of city traffic. The apartment looked different somehow, smaller, like it belonged to a different version of Serena who hadn't yet become a mother. You need help getting settled? Rachel asked. I've got it. You sure? Because I can stay, help you figure out the baby stuff. Rachel, Serena smiled. Go to work. I'll be fine. We'll be fine. Rachel hugged her carefully. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. After she left, it was just Serena and Emma. The quiet felt enormous. Emma woke up hungry around noon. Serena fed her, changed her, rocked her back to sleep, then did it all again 2 hours later, and again 2 hours after that. The days blurred into nights, nights into days, everything measured in feeding schedules and diaper changes and brief snatches of sleep. Damien came by on Saturday. Serena let him in cautiously, Emma in her arms. How are you doing? He asked. Tired, sore, wondering if I'll ever sleep more than 90 minutes at a time again. Can I help? She wanted to say no. Wanted to prove she could do this alone. But Emma was fussy and Serena's body hurt and pride seemed less important than survival. You can hold her while I shower, she said. I haven't had a real shower since before the hospital. Okay, show me what to do if she cries. Serena walked him through the basics. Bottle if she's hungry, diaper change if she's wet, rocking if she just needs comfort. Then she handed over Emma and escaped to the bathroom. The hot water felt like absolution. She stood under it longer than necessary, letting it wash away the exhaustion and fear and lingering resentment. When she came out, wrapped in her bathrobe, she found Damien on the couch with Emma asleep on his chest. She cried for about 2 minutes, he said quietly. Then I walked around with her, and she settled down. You're a natural. I'm terrified, but I'm trying. Serena sat down in the chair across from him. You can't just fix this with trying. You know that, right? You can't just show up and be nice for a few weeks and expect me to forget what happened. I know. Do you? Because I need to make sure we're clear. I'm letting you be part of Emma's life because she deserves a father. Not because I've forgiven you. Not because I think we're going to get back together. Just because it's what's best for her. I understand. And if at any point I think you're not actually capable of being the father she needs, I will cut you out. Completely. I understand that too. He looked at Emma sleeping peacefully. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for us. I'm just asking for a chance to be her dad. That's all. They sat in silence for a while. Emma slept on, oblivious to the complicated history of the people who made her. Eventually, Damien stood carefully and transferred Emma to her bassinet without waking her. Magic. I should go, he said. Let you rest. Same time next week? If that works for you. It works. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Serena, I'm proud of you for doing this, for being strong enough to protect her, for being a good mother. I know I don't have the right to say that, but it's true. After he left, Serena stood at the window holding Emma, looking out at the city. Your dad is complicated, she told the sleeping baby. But maybe people are allowed to be complicated. Maybe that's okay. Emma made a small sound. Agreement or protest, impossible to tell. The weeks turned into months. Damien came every Saturday, sometimes staying for an hour, sometimes for the whole afternoon. He learned how to change diapers without gagging, how to soothe Emma when she was overtired, how to make her laugh with silly faces. Serena watched him become a father. It wasn't smooth. He made mistakes, held her too tight when he was nervous, panicked when she cried for more than 5 minutes, tried to apply business logic to baby problems in ways that didn't work. But he showed up every single week, never late, never with excuses. And slowly, Serena started to see the person he might have been if the empire hadn't consumed him. The person who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, who sat on the floor playing with toys that made no sense, who looked at Emma like she was the center of his universe. One Saturday, when Emma was 4 months old, Damien showed up looking anxious. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Okay. My Aunt Gloria wants to meet Emma. She's been asking. I told her it was up to you." Serena's jaw tightened. Gloria, who'd made it clear from day one that Serena wasn't good enough. Gloria, who'd sat in that conference room looking satisfied that the marriage was ending. "No," she said. "Okay. I'll tell her." "Wait." Serena looked at Emma, who was discovering her feet with intense fascination. "Actually, yes. She can meet Emma. But here, with me present. And if she says one word about me being inadequate, or Emma not being legitimate, or anything about bloodlines and legacy, she leaves. Immediately." Fair enough. Gloria came the following week. She looked older than Serena remembered, less imposing. She held Emma carefully, like she might break. "She has the crew's eyes," Gloria said. "And your mouth, Serena." It was possibly the first neutral thing Gloria had ever said to her. They made awkward small talk for 30 minutes. Gloria left without drama, kissing Emma's forehead and telling Damien she'd like to visit again sometime. After she was gone, Serena looked at Damien. "That went better than expected." "She's been different lately. Since Emma was born, I think it reminded her that family is more than just legacy. People can change, I guess. Some people, if they want to badly enough." The statement hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to address. When Emma was 6 months old, Serena made a decision. She took the settlement money, the amount that had been sitting untouched in her account, and invested it. Not in running away, not in hiding, in building something. She enrolled in a graduate program, business management, because she'd learned enough from watching Damien to know she was good at it. She hired a part-time nanny so she could attend classes. She started building a future that belonged to her. Damien noticed. "You're going back to school." "I am." "That's good. You always wanted to finish your degree." "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things I didn't pay enough attention to at the time." Rachel threw her a graduation party 2 years later. Small gathering, close friends, Emma running around in a dress that made her look older than 2.5. Damien showed up with flowers. "Congratulations," he said. "I'm proud of you." "You keep saying that." "Because I keep meaning it." They'd settled into something that almost looked like friendship. Co-parents who could stand to be in the same room, who consulted each other about decisions, who showed up for Emma's milestones together, first steps, first words, first day of daycare. There were still hard moments, times when Serena remembered the pain and had to step away, times when Damien said something that landed wrong and had to apologize, times when Emma asked why Mommy and Daddy didn't live together and they had to explain in terms a toddler could understand. But they were managing, making it work, giving Emma 2 parents who showed up. One evening, after Emma was asleep, Damien lingered at the door. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Really forgive me?" Serena considered the question. "I don't know. Some days I think I already have. Other days I remember how it felt, and I'm right back in that conference room feeling worthless." "That's fair. But I don't hate you anymore. That's something. It's more than I deserve. Probably. But Emma deserves a father who's trying. And you are. Trying, I mean. You're showing up. You're putting in the work. You're being the dad I hoped you could be." "Is there any chance He stopped, started again. "Is there any chance we could ever be more than co-parents? Not now. I know you're not ready. Maybe never. But someday?" Serena looked at him. At the man who'd broken her heart and then spent 2 years proving he was capable of change. At the father who read bedtime stories and showed up for tantrums and loved their daughter with an intensity that still surprised her. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe. Someday. If you keep being this person. If you keep showing me that the man I married is still in there somewhere, If you prove that you can value me for who I am and not just what I can give you, I can do that. Then maybe we'll see. He smiled, the real smile, the one that used to make her stomach flip. That's more than I hoped for. 3 years after the divorce, Serena stood in a park watching Emma play on the swings. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle, the world full of possibility. Damien appeared beside her, hands in his pockets. She's fearless, he said, watching Emma pump her legs to go higher. She gets that from you. She gets it from you. You're the bravest person I know. I'm really not. You walked away from everything to protect her. That's bravery. Emma jumped off the swing at the highest point, landed hard, got up laughing. Both parents tensed, then relaxed when they saw she was fine. We should get her into gymnastics, Damien said. We should get her into therapy for having 2 anxious parents. He laughed. Probably. They stood together watching their daughter play. Not touching. Not together in the way they used to be, but not separate either. I've been thinking, Damien said. Dangerous. I want to step back from the company, not retire completely, just take a less active role, spend more time with Emma while she's young. Serena looked at him, surprised. Really? Really? I missed too much already because I was too busy building an empire. I don't want to miss more. What about the board? Gloria? All the people who expect you to prioritize business? They'll adjust, or they won't. Either way, Emma is more important. Emma ran over then, sweaty and excited. Daddy, did you see me jump? I did. You flew. I'm going to do it again. Watch. She ran back to the swings. Damien and Serena watched her go. She's everything, Damien said softly. She is. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that, to understand what actually matters. Serena didn't answer immediately. She watched Emma climb onto the swing, legs pumping, face determined. You're here now, she said finally. That's what counts. Later, after Emma was tired and sticky with ice cream, after they'd walked her back to Serena's apartment and put her down for a nap, Damien lingered at the door. Same time next week? He asked. Actually, Serena hesitated. Do you want to stay for dinner? Emma's been asking when you're going to eat with us. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, carefully controlled. I'd like that. It's nothing fancy, just pasta. That sounds perfect. They cooked together in the small kitchen, Damien chopping vegetables while Serena handled the pasta, moving around each other in the practiced way of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. Emma helped by making a mess with the cheese grater and declaring herself the best cook. Over dinner, Emma talked about daycare and her friend Mason, who ate paste, and how she wanted a dog. But Mommy said maybe when she was older. I said we'd talk about it when she was older, Serena corrected. That's the same thing as no, Emma said wisely. Damien laughed. She's got you figured out. After Emma was in bed, they cleaned up together. Damien washed, Serena dried, falling into an easy silence. This was nice, Damien said. Feels almost normal. It was nice. Would you want to do it again? Not as co-parents doing a dinner exchange, just dinner, the 3 of us. Serena set down the dish towel. Damien, I know we're not there yet. Maybe we'll never be there. But I miss this. Miss you. Miss feeling like we're a family instead of just 2 people who share custody. We are a family, just a different kind than you wanted. I want whatever version includes you and Emma. That's all. Serena looked at him, really looked at him. At the gray in his hair that hadn't been there 3 years ago. At the lines around his eyes from smiling at Emma. At the man who destroyed her, and then spent years trying to earn his way back. Let's take it slow, she said. Dinners are fine, but that's all right now. I need to know you're not just doing this because you want me back. I need to know you actually value having me in your life for reasons that have nothing to do with Emma. I do. I value you, your strength, your intelligence, the way you challenge me, the way you make me want to be better than I am. Then prove it. Keep proving it. Show me every day that you're the man I thought I married, the one who existed before the empire ate him alive. I can do that. Okay, she smiled slightly, then we'll see where this goes. He left that night without trying to kiss her, without pushing for more than she was ready to give, just a squeeze of her hand and a promise to see her next week. Serena cleaned up the rest of the kitchen and checked on Emma, who was sprawled across her toddler bed like a starfish. She tucked the blanket around her daughter and stood there for a moment, watching her breathe. This wasn't the life she'd planned. Wasn't the happy ending she'd imagined when she'd walked down the aisle in a white dress and promised forever. But it was real. Complicated and messy and built from the wreckage of something that had broken beyond repair, built by two people who'd hurt each other and then chosen to do the work of becoming better. For themselves. For their daughter. For the possibility of something neither of them could quite name yet. Emma stirred in her sleep, reaching for the stuffed rabbit Damien had given her in the hospital, the one that had become her constant companion. Serena thought about the man who'd brought that gift, the one who'd stood in the corner during delivery, terrified and helpless, the one who showed up every week without fail, the one who was learning, slowly, what it meant to put people before power. Maybe some mistakes were too big to forgive completely. Maybe some wounds never fully healed, but maybe that was okay. Maybe you didn't need perfect healing to build something new. Maybe you just needed two people willing to try. She didn't know if she and Damien would ever be together again. Didn't know if she even wanted that, or if co-parenting and careful friendship was all they'd ever manage. But she knew Emma would grow up with a father who loved her, who showed up, who'd learned what actually mattered, and she knew that she'd survived something that should have destroyed her, had walked through fire and come out the other side stronger, had built a life on her own terms. The rest would figure itself out. Or it wouldn't. Either way, she'd be okay. They'd all be okay. Serena turned off the light and closed Emma's door softly. Tomorrow she had class and Emma had daycare, and Damien would probably text something about weekend plans. Life would continue in its complicated, imperfect way, and that was enough. Sometimes enough was everything.